The defending national champions, also the number one team in the country for 2025. Welcome into Buckeyes Live right here at the Voice of College Football. We're back to our typical and regular time here at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on a Wednesday. Please like the video before we get going. Just go ahead and do that. Get it out of the way. You know you're going to enjoy the discussion for the next 60 minutes. Steve Hellwagon here, Bucknuts 247 Sports. Tony Gerdeman alongside Buckeye Huddle, Buckeye Weekly, making the grand entrance. Guys, how we doing today?
Doing well.
Good.
All right. For as much as it is the usual approach on these type of deals to look ahead, because, you know, what's happened is what happened. It is Texas and it is Grambling State. So I think we can kind of buck the trend for the next couple of weeks in terms of our focus on Ohio State football, because we found out much about this football team, or maybe not. We shall see. Steve, your initial thoughts about the Texas game and what you think became a little bit clearer for you and what yet remains to be seen.
Yeah, just a tremendous win, obviously, for Ohio State. And, you know, it looked like one of those games from the 1970s that Woody Hayes might have coached, where it was just two fighters standing in the middle of the ring trading, these huge punches back and forth and dodging, the bullet here and dodging the bullet there. Great goal line stand. Ohio State on 4 different occasions stopped Texas on 4th down. Texas was 1 for 5 on 4th down, and that may be the story of this game, is just how great the Ohio State defense was to hold Texas to 7 points in this game. Arch Manning, his 3rd career start, but first as the lead quarterback for Texas, not filling in for somebody else. And the Ohio State defense did a lot of great things in terms of disguising what they were doing with their coverages, mixing up their pressures, different blitz packages, different games up front, different alignments up front. And really, I thought, put decent enough pressure on Arch Manning that he was uncomfortable and did not play particularly well in this game. So that really went a long way toward Ohio State winning this game. I think the crowd for a noon game was awesome, and the atmosphere was one of the best that I can remember at Ohio Stadium, despite the fact it was a noon start. I think there's plenty of room for improvement on the offensive side of the ball, obviously only scoring 14 points. Julian's saying they didn't put too much on his plate, and they didn't run the ball all that effectively, but they did manage a couple of touchdown drives, put the ball in the end zone on 4th and goal at the 1. So they did, and Texas didn't. And ultimately, that's the difference in this one. But a tremendous game. Ohio State defeats the team that was the preseason number 1, Texas. I think they're still a pretty good team and a contender to win the SEC as the season goes on, particularly if Manning can get on track here in the next few weeks before SEC games begin. Build a rapport with his receivers, have his offensive line come together a little bit better. I think Texas will be pretty good as the season wears on, but I think Ohio State, provided they can make some improvement offensively themselves, is going to be a very formidable team as well.
Stevie said they didn't put much on his plate. They didn't give him a plate. They gave him, here's a little bit of food on a napkin. When you're done with this,
like we give the dog a little treat. They give him here's a treat. So
once you're done with this, you can come back and you can get some more, and then we'll talk about it. And he handled that perfectly. There were several times throughout the game where I know I wasn't alone thinking he's the more comfortable quarterback out there. And maybe you can attribute that to the defense or just attribute that to the quarterback for being calm in the face of the pressure that he was facing. So I was impressed. Certainly didn't ask him to do a lot, and they'll ask him to do more as it goes on. The running game is a concern, but it was only a few yards fewer than they rushed for against Texas last year, and so I don't think people thought the running game last year was an issue. It's still it's still out there to be determined on how good it will be. I think the 4th and goal is still one of my favorite in terms of just how interesting it was that you bring in Nate Roberts, true freshman tight end, to play fullback, and then you run right behind him. And that's an exhibition on how deep the tight end room is, but then also how much you trust that one player for that competitive excellence that Ryan Day is always talking about. When your number's called, you got to be ready to go, and he was. So overall, a pretty good effort. I still think they gave up too many rushing yards. I think that's a concern. We'll have to figure out about that later on. And then also the 203 yards of total offense, the same number that Lincoln Keenholz produced in the Cotton Bowl against Missouri. And those are two wildly different outcomes. So still a lot to learn, but they learned a lot from this game.
Yeah. So before we let Kevin go, I would say it this way for me, that I don't have any questions that have been completely answered, but I have a long list of strong or slight leans in one direction about how much different I feel about different issues and concerns and just position groups with this team. Kevin, your initial thoughts on the Buckeyes win?
Yeah, I'll have the gift of ignorance of not knowing what anybody has really said, just coming in toward the end of Tony's answer to the question. No, I don't know if we've learned anything definitively about this team other than, hey, they're probably pretty good. I think we're going to need to have a little bit more framing to know if Texas was as good as we thought they were. Is this really a win over the number one team? I mean, it is in terms of historical records and everything else, but was Texas all that it was cracked up to be? I learned that they had a very conservative game plan for Julian Sand, and I'd said in pieces and in interviews and everything else, let's not see a situation of where they throw him out there to the wolves and see if he sinks or swims. And they gave him a very manageable game plan. His receivers probably were not always there for him in terms of a couple of drops along the way that could have really expanded the numbers from being pretty all right to not terrible. I mean, the yardage number wasn't fantastic. I think I learned that, at least in terms of that game, that C.J. Donaldson was better suited to play Texas maybe than James Peoples. I think we'll see some things in the next couple of weeks when the running lanes are going to be wider against Grambling and Ohio University, of where we'll see the things that make James Peoples special. We learned that Matt Patricia ain't no silver medal when it comes to defensive coordinators. He came out and, it took a lot longer for Jim Knowles to kind of turn around the Ohio State defense. It wasn't like the defense needed turning around, but it had a new captain in charge. And, I learned that there was something called coffee house in terms of football. It just goes to show how little I know in terms of the current terminology. And everybody's like, oh yeah, didn't you know about that? I'm like, no, I didn't. And I learned that despite the best efforts of maybe a few talking heads, that a lot of the pollsters still watched the games and didn't bite the cheese and vote LSU number one.
Julian Sand, let's start there. So, as Tony mentioned, not much given there in regards to what was on the plate, or if there was even a plate at all. Point number two that Tony emphasized was the poise that he showed. And then, Kevin, you talked about the drop passes. So 13 of 20 for $130. Max Clare dropped a ball, right out of the gate, first drive of the game. Max Clare drops a pass that was perfectly thrown on the sideline. I know that Ryan Day went nuts on the sideline, apparently telling him he should have went to Jeremiah Smith, but he threw a perfect pass to arguably the best pass catching tight end in the nation for what would have been the ball would have hit him right in the nose. And then Jeremiah Smith was nothing close to the best player in the country on Saturday. He wasn't the best player. I don't think he was one of the 10 best players on the field on Saturday. So he turned in an awful game. Did he drop 3?
At least 2.
Two
So
at the top of my mind, and they're
16
probably
of 20. for saying right there if they don't drop any passes. So he pretty much did everything that he possibly could. And you wonder how much the field position affected the game plan as well.
I think you could say Ennis may have dropped one as well on the over the shoulder. That's a tough catch, though. He's kind of looking back, and I don't know if the sun would have been here. I don't know if it was, was in his eyes or what, but he gets those 4. That's 17 of 20. And honestly, if Claire, this is what happened is when Claire doesn't catch that pass. Well, now Texas is going the other direction. And, they get a few yards and they punt and pin Ohio State all the way back, deep in their own territory. And it screwed up the field position for Ohio State the entire first half. They were pinned back in their own end. You're certainly not going to have a guy in his first career start going against the number 1 team, going out there on the 5-yard line, looking to throw the ball all over the place and get a pick 6 going the other direction. And now you're down 7-0. You're not going to give Texas points. Or attempt to give Texas points by doing something stupid. So Ohio State played the long game. They were patient. They knew that their defense could hold Texas, which they pretty much did, and they kept it very simple for Julian Sayin, and he was opportunistic. But if he gets that Claire pass, changes the complexion of the entire game. They go up 7-0 right there, like 3 more plays. They're in the end zone. So and then it goes from there. So it's amazing the way that one play, kind of changes the whole feel of the game. And for the offense, for Ohio State, for Sayin, I mean, it's unfortunate, but I think that Ohio State, Ryan Day, Brian Hartline did the smart thing and waited for the opportunity to attack. And when it did, they were able to punch the ball in the end zone. And then they really set up that play action pass to Carnell Tate in the third quarter incredibly well by running, by throwing underneath all day. It may have only been the second deep pass they had tried besides the Ennis one, maybe another one to Tate, but that was perfectly timed and perfectly executed in my book.
Yeah, I think the throw that didn't get made to Jeremiah, Ryan Day talked about it yesterday. They immediately talked on the sideline. Julian Sayin told him what he saw, and Day's like, okay, it was an acceptable answer. Maybe he could have gotten the ball to Claire a little bit earlier, but it was a perfect throw. Should have caught it. I think it shows the fact that they're willing to attack in the first quarter, first drive. They wanted to throw deep on 4th down. That shows you the amount of confidence they have in Julian Sayin. And then before that possession where they went deep to Carnell Tate, they were telling Julian, be aware if we can get this in this situation, because the series before that, they were pinned again, so they couldn't. That was the second series of the third quarter. They couldn't really throw deep because they're backed up into their own end zone. They didn't want to do anything crazy. So then when they finally get to midfield, they wanted to attack, and then they told them to just be prepared. If you get there, we're going to call it, and they did. And people are like, well, the throw was behind him, and as Ryan Day says, they coached the quarterbacks to give your receiver a chance. And when you've got these receivers that Ohio State does, a chance is a pretty good percentage for you. And so he caught it twice, brought it in for the touchdown, and that was pretty much the ball game. Day said it afterwards, probably could have asked more of him, and if Texas would have scored more, they would have asked more of him. And I think this will be the last time you see him throw for 126 yards in a win over a ranked opponent. I think they're going to start – there's going to be a lot more on his plate moving forward, and I think he wants more, frankly.
I too feel this will be the last time we see him throw for $120 something in any game.
Maybe this week.
Well, then again,
no, he'll be like 240 at halftime.
These players need more. They need to play more football. So while I think it's important for them to get Lincoln Keenholz out there for at least a quarter to play and to have some more seasoning and everything else, if Julian Sayin came out of the Texas game throwing for 215, a couple scores or whatever, I think it's easier to say, well, he's already done it. He did it in this big situation. We feel pretty good. Let's work on the depth. Let's work on getting some bigger pops in the running game. Let's work on a lot of these things. But I think that your quarterback is so important. you got to play them at least 2.5 quarters. And
I agree.
all apologies to Langston out of the NAIA, Grambling's opponent. We don't know a darn thing about what what the secondary may look like for Grambling and everything else. But I have a feeling that Malik Muhammad and Michael Taff and some of those types of players are not lurking there for the Tigers or whatever. So I think that Ohio State can kind of run an accelerated extra credit course for certain players and get them 4 quarters worth of credit in 2, and then re-enroll everybody from the 2s and 3s.
Why not run some tempo then? They don't run tempo. This would be an opportunity. If you want to get your guys 3 snaps, 3 quarters worth of snaps in 2 quarters, just move quicker, because there's going to be plenty of 3 and outs as well for the opponent, and probably some 3 and outs for Ohio State, but the 3 and outs will lead to touchdowns.
You're saying that Doug Williams and Everson Walls are not walking through that door?
Nope.
No.
Probably not. I've started looking at box scores. Haven't found any footage. Can't say I'm looking for footage of that Grambling Langston game or whatever. And that's about as far as it's going to go. I considered just making up names for Grambling players just to see if anybody would notice. But now that I've let the secret out, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take it seriously and write a real piece, but not a real long piece.
Kevin Jackson wants to know if that was an off-season beard, and what was the decision process there?
I gave it a year plus, and I was like, oh, I'm going to save money. I'm going to save money on razors and not have to do this. No, I was spending more money on a beard than I was without a beard. So it wasn't strictly a financial decision. It was a matter of it was just getting itchy and annoying, so it's gone.
Hey,
I have people tell me all the time to grow a beard, and I get started, and it's itchy and annoying.
Kevin does look better, I think, without the beard. I'll say that. Not that I'm an expert on men's grooming and all that.
There you go, Kevin.
Yeah,
There you go, exactly.
you got the
Thumbs up.
I'll take it.
Grambling State 27 SWAC championships, 16 Black College National Championships. Eddie Robinson, 408 wins in 55 seasons. Doug Williams was a quarterback there and was the first Black quarterback to win a Super Bowl. Came back. He was successful as a Grambling coach. Willie Brown, Buck Buchanan, Willie Davis, and Charlie Joyner are some of the top names that are on here. Ohio State has won these 4 previous games against FCS opponents, average of 45 points per game. I had it in here somewhere. Let's just see. The last 3 years, Grambling has lost to Arkansas State 58-3. That was in 2022. They lost to LSU in 2023 at Tiger Stadium 72-10. And lost to Louisiana, the one that they just call Louisiana. I think that's Louisiana Monroe, 40-10, or maybe that's Louisiana Lafayette. I don't know. I don't know which one it is, but they lost them 40-10. So you get the picture that when they go up and play FBS teams, it's not very competitive games, and don't expect this one to be either. I don't know there was no initial line, but I think one has now been set. I don't know if anybody knows exactly what it is. We had it on our site, if I can find it.
Like based on like the analytics and the FPIs and those sorts of ratings, you're talking about somewhere between 55 and 63 points. I don't know I don't know if you can go bet on it anywhere like that. But Bill Connolly, who works for ESPN and does his ratings, he ranks all of the college football teams, like down to like D3, NAIA and stuff like that. So Ohio State is ranked number 1. And this is all because analytics and things like that. Your Grambling State, I believe Tigers are 236th nationally. They beat Langston, who is 513th in this ranking, just a few spots ahead of Wittenberg and Heidelberg, to give you an idea of the level of competition that Grambling State has played. And then Imagine going, your first game is against Heidelberg-ish, and then your next game is against Ohio State.
Well, according to what has been communicated to me about the ESPN FPI, is that Texas is still the number one team in the country.
Well,
Oh, good Lord.
Impossible to deny it. Look,
We got a
nobody has-
baseball bat to smash that computer. Jesus.
who has a better loss?
That's it. That's how you determine this.
They are an SEC team, so it's
Well-
it's good losses over good wins.
Heather Dinich was like, "Oh, LSU should be number one," and what they did was reasonably impressive. I don't think Clemson, as it turns out, is all that they were cracked up to be. It only scored 10 points against LSU. So yeah, at home, I mean that's crazy. But
We go into these week one openers, and obviously we know what we know about these teams based on who they brought back from last year and what the program is. I don't think that there's a surest. I think that the most honest Ohio State detractor would have to admit there is not a more sure thing in college football right now than Ohio State and knowing that this team is going to be good. I don't think anything else. I think there are other questions about other teams. We don't know about Clemson. We don't know about LSU. I don't think there's a sure thing. No, we can't see the future, but I think that this being a top 5 team is the most sure thing that we know right now.
well, especially when you hear things like Alabama is no longer Alabama, with different players, from past players that were on the sideline for that Florida State game, said something was missing. The enthusiasm, whatever it was that brought that program together for 20 years or 15 years under Nick Saban, it's gone. So the magic of that is gone. Well, Ohio State has captured all that magic, and they are perpetuating it even with a new group of players. You send 14 guys to the NFL, but you're still able to pull off a win like this as you're still trying to build your team and still trying to find out what kind of a team you have. And I think that goes back to the coaches, Coach Day and Hartline, Patricia, everybody that again built this team one day at a time, one chip at a time, and put it together to start this season. That they deserve credit, where Alabama wasn't able to answer the bell in its opening game with a similarly talented team, you would assume, Ohio State was. So I think they deserve some credit for that.
And I don't want to be misunderstood. I'm not saying Ohio State's the best team in the country for sure. I'm just saying that they, with all this speculation, and we go through these calisthenics after every week one of every college football season. Well, were they really that good? They must not be that good because they wouldn't have lost. We go through that with tons of teams, and Clemson included. They were supposed to be back to an elite team. Maybe they're still a 3 or 4 loss top 15 or 20 team and really not that good. I think we can definitively say that Ohio State is the surest elite team in the country.
It was about this time last week that Marty Smith on ESPN said on the radio that, we know whoever wins the LSU Clemson game is going to be number 1 this week. And the two hosts, it was on Sirius XM, so it would have been with Dusty Dvorak and Danny Cannell. Like, nobody corrected him to be like, "Are you sure? Like, are you sure that's going to be what happens when you've got a 1 versus 3 also playing that weekend? Like, why are you so sure? And why are you so dismissive of 1 versus 3? Because, I mean, there is an SEC team in there, although maybe Marty does not consider Texas SEC enough just yet because they're more Southwest and Southeast. I don't know, but it was interesting to see that. And is Ohio State the best team in the nation? I know people probably don't want to play their defense, and they know that the offense is much more capable than what they showed on Saturday. And I don't know how many defenses Ohio State is going to see that are going to be like Texas this season.
Yakov, we appreciate you being here. Yakov says 4th and goal defense reminds me of the 1986 Giants. You know what that reminds me of? Tony talked about the rushing offense not being up to snuff, but pulling through on the key situations, and Texas being kind of the inverse, where they were able to run the ball a little bit, but couldn't come through in the key situations. It looks like the DNA from that 2024 defense carried over to the 2025 defense. That's what it reminded me of.
Yeah, just three returning starters, but you got studs up front: Caden McDonald, Nedrick Houston, And again, I haven't really gone back and watched that fourth down play a lot, but it's my inclination that when the ball was snapped, those two guys and whoever else was up there just submarined the offensive line. And the offensive line, if they're here, they never move forward at all. I mean, they were stuck in there. They couldn't go forward. There was nowhere for them to go. And if they don't go forward, there's nowhere for Arch Manning to go. I mean, Arch Manning, you know, he's like as wide as my hands will be on this thing. He's that far short of the goal line. I mean, where we sit up in the press box, we're kind of in that north end. I'm looking right down on it on my binoculars, and I'm like, I said to the guy next to me, I said, he doesn't even begin to get close. There's no replay necessary. He took the snap and like got the ball to the center's helmet. I mean, that was it. And the center never moved from 2 or 3 feet from the goal line. So, you know, that there wasn't anything to review. And they submarined him, and then like Caden Curry and Lorenzo Styles jumped over the pile to hug him and not allow him to go anywhere. He couldn't, even if he could get his feet on the ground, he couldn't push off to go forward because they weren't going to let him go forward. So that was like a textbook how you stop the quarterback sneak on the goal line. They knew exactly what was coming. Texas rushed to the line of scrimmage to try it that way. Ohio State couldn't sub in, its goal line package, but Ohio State had it figured out, had the right people in there, and they played it perfectly. And that was a great moment. You know, I mean, that was one, that they're going to borrow off of, all season long, that when they were in that position, they held tough and were able to stop Texas in that moment. And I think that's one that this defense will borrow back from, for weeks to come.
I will say the 8 tackles for Caden McDonald, I went back and looked, and that's the most I could find for an Ohio State nose tackle since 2012. So Garrett Goebel had 9 in a game, and Jonathan Hankins, I didn't really consider him the nose tackle necessarily, but it's been a long time since I've seen the 2012 team. So he had 10 a couple of games. So just rarefied air for Caden McDonald. Even though 7 of those were assists, I wouldn't call him a pile jumper. He's mainly the pile that gets jumped on. So
yeah,
this is not Paul Posluszny grabbing up a bunch of tackles.
He's tremendous.
The Amazon link's in the description section of this video and all the videos. When you shop on Amazon, please use the link that we provide. It's the same shopping experience. It does not change your account or do anything in that regard, and it does not cost you a penny. So it's the one way you can contribute here at the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. The Amazon link, it's in the description section. So, Steve, you thought there was a decent pass rush on Arch Manning. See, you guys have probably watched this game twice. I've only seen it once. And the one thing I said about a concern in this game was that if they didn't get a pass rush on Arch Manning, that a nervous quarterback in a hostile environment may soon turn into a confident quarterback because he can stand in a clean pocket. And I was impressed with everything about that defense on Saturday, except a few running plays. Except I didn't think until late that they brought pressure against Arch Manning, and they didn't seem to me that they were really getting to him or anywhere close most of the time.
Yeah, I think that the plan was to keep him in the pocket and not let him escape. So they didn't sell out coming off the edge to go get him so much as they wanted to set the edge and not allow him to contain and let McDonald and Houston gradually kind of push the pocket back into his lap. And I think that Arvell Reese obviously had a sack early in the game. That was a difference-making type play for the defense, and I think helped them on a third down. I think get a stop. So I believe, and I would agree with you. Like they weren't. I mean, they certainly had the one sack, and then of course Hicks had the pressure on the last play when they threw it out to the left flat, and then Downs cleaned up the play and made sure the guy didn't get to the line to the gain on fourth down. So, but I just didn't I just felt like they were giving him enough pressure that he was not comfortable. And he never settled in. I mean, finally they had the drive where he hit a couple passes and the touchdown, with 3.5 minutes to go in the game. They held him scoreless for 56 minutes. So, I see what you're saying. In the traditional sense, they didn't sack him a whole bunch and maybe they didn't knock him down a whole bunch, but I think there was just enough pressure that he was feeling it, that he knew he had to get rid of the ball. And he and his receivers just were not on the same page. It didn't feel like. So to me, they've got a lot of work to do, I think, with their passing offense to get it where it needs to be.
Well, when you remember that Arch was their running quarterback last year, obviously there's a concern about him getting loose and running around and everything else. So to Steve's point, I think that there was a lot of contain in place there, and they did a good job of it. I mean, I'm sitting here, I got the box score right here, 10 carries for 38 yards. I mean, yeah, you're not thrilled about that, a 15-yarder in there as well, but 7 points, 7 points on the scoreboard, and those 7 points didn't happen until the final 4 minutes of the game. There was a little bit of a scare in there for a minute, but they were able to get through it. So I'm not as concerned about the pass rush. I saw some stats about the rush they were able to generate by sending 4. I've not watched it that closely to be able to confirm nor deny, nor do I want to be that guy to go through and do all of that stuff. The people who do snap counts and things like that, they're doing the Lord's work, because I don't want to do it. But I was wholly impressed with what I saw there. I mean, when it was like CJ Hicks and the final defensive play and what he was able to do, some other things I saw. Bo Atkinson, I had to look up 14 a couple of times. I'm like, who the heck is this guy? And, because we're sitting so high, it's not like you can just sit there. It was always easy to know who like BB Landers was, because he looked like BB-8 from the Star Wars movies. I mean, he was just so short and everything else, but you do lose track of guys sometimes with the vantage point that we have up top.
The losing Kenyatta Jackson, I think that caused some of that. I don't think he should play this week. There's no reason for him to play this week. But we'll see. Ryan Day said they're trying to get him ready for it. But I agree with Steve. It was, I think, more of a contained thing. And then rush with Arvell Reese being a guy that can rush because he can also chase out of the contain. And you saw Arch Manning get out of there once and gets a 15-yard carry. And I thought if he had run more throughout the game and been more of a part of the running game, Texas has a pretty good chance of winning this one, or at least scoring points and then forcing Ohio State to score more points. And so I think as well as Ohio State covers, they're just like, let's just make Arch Manning beat us with his arm and avoid letting his feet do it. And that was clearly the right move based on how inaccurate he was throughout this game. And even his second to last throw to a wide open receiver that would have been a first down was high and behind, and the receiver couldn't make the catch. And then Ryan Wingo couldn't bring it in. And had he, then we're talking about this being a different game. And so they covered well. They did enough pressure, and they changed the picture for him pre-snap and post-snap, which creates pressure in a different way that was affecting him. And just the confusion and not knowing where to go from snap to snap that's just as important as somebody chasing you and getting you out of the pocket. They didn't want to get him out of the pocket. They just thought, let's just confuse him and tackle and see what happens. And they were right.
Buckeye fans, I'm trying to embarrass you here. So we started this channel about 2 years before the Michigan channel, something like that, and probably had a 2,000 or 3,000 subscriber lead, and now down by 2,600. So Michigan, 11,900, Ohio State, just over 9,300. So please subscribe here. And the memberships are down on the ticker below. The Block O Club, JT wasn't short. We don't give a damn. I didn't make those up, but I guess I did approve them. So there you go. Those are the 3 tiers. If you've got suggestions, then we can add those along. But you're down by 2,600 subs, so please subscribe here. and get those memberships in. Follow Tony's work, Kevin's work, and Steve's work. Tony, what do you have going on this week?
Just wrote about Julian Sand again, following his performance and the throws that he didn't make, the throws that he did make. So you can find that at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And then I have more this week on, what to look forward to this weekend, because you're going to see a bunch of people. It's a spring game in September. So there's be a lot of new faces and players that we did not get to see against Texas. You'll be seeing a bunch of in this one.
Kevin, what's going on this week?
Always tail of the tape with real names. I should finish writing that today. I wanted to get it done earlier in the week, but it's just I think it's tougher with opponents that you're never going to see again. There's no crossover scouting again, but we'll have that set to go tomorrow. I'm not going to do a by the numbers piece this week because there's just not enough numbers that interest me about this. So maybe I'll do a piece instead where I kind of look at Grambling through history and just, the great Eddie Robinson and everything that happened there. That'll be a Friday piece. And then, of course, on Sunday, I will wrap up kind of, some highlights from what happened in the Big Ten as we do kind of a Big Ten look around.
Steve.
Yep, just more of the same here at bucknuts.com. And, of course, we'll have Coach Day after practice today and a few players for an interview session. And working on my game data story for Ohio State and Grambling, trying to find some interesting pegs there. And, first time the schools have ever played. And Grambling is bringing their band. So if you're a banding, this is the game to come to. And I think that somebody said they're going to perform at halftime as part of the halftime show. So plus the alumni band is there for the Quad Script Ohio. Three bands. How do they find room inside the stadium for three bands? But that'll be the case this week. And a shout out to the crowd. I think, again, the noon start last week didn't deter the crowd noise and the excitement for that game. And I think Ohio State fed off of it. So we'll see if they can carry that over to some of the bigger games that are coming up the pike here in the next few weeks.
Our buddy Ryan Dawes pulling through for us today. Brian, we appreciate gifting 5 Ohio State at the Voice of College Football memberships. And if I were a better owner, I would be able to tell you what you get with those memberships, like kind of emojis and badges, and I don't know what else the deal is. But I will look that up and let you know. At some point, I've kind of lost control of this entire network to a certain extent. So our buddy Garrison and Mike, they pretty much run things here. We show up on Wednesday, but they're here. I can't even remember that. Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, I believe, are the times that they are here doing their prime time and call-in show. So check out Michael and Garrison. They do a fine job, and get your membership. And thank you so much for that, Ryan.
I will say the crowd was incredible, and so were the changes that Ohio State made to the game day atmosphere. It was very loud down on the field. I expect it'll be just as loud in terms of the PA stuff and the music and the band. I don't know if the crowd will be as in it for Grambling, but in terms of where all of those band members will sit, I don't think that the Grambling fans are going to travel 5,000 deep. So there'll probably be plenty of seats available where the visiting fans get to sit.
I'm going to ask the impossible question about the running game, but if Trey Henderson and Quinshon Judkins are in the backfield on Saturday, how much different does the running game look?
Last year against Texas, they rushed for 81 yards on 24 carries, 3.4 yards per carry. This time they're like 2.3 or whatever. So, and that's with a quarterback that can also run to help that. So they didn't run against Texas last year. And I know we don't judge the Ohio State running game based off of what they did last year against Texas, but I'd like to see more explosion somewhere from that running game to make it look like there's something there. I also think you don't need to see it this week, but at some point, Julian Sand's got to pull the ball on some of these reads, give him some reads, let him run just to keep the defense honest. But I do wonder, I don't know, you guys can all answer this as well. how far can this running game go if it's C.J. Donaldson leading the way? And I think people are going to get a good look at Bo Jackson this week, and we'll want to see more and more moving forward.
Yeah, I think there was a reason they didn't play him against Texas, because he's a true freshman, and you wouldn't, put somebody out there for the first time in that situation and then risk a bad result. So if James Peoples isn't going to net more than 2 yards a carry, then it's Bo Jackson's turn to show what he can do, in my opinion. And we'll see how much different this looks. Obviously against Grambling and Ohio University, they've got until the 27th, to get this figured out, because the bullets start flying for real, later this month with the road trip to Washington, the Big Ten opener. So they got to get the running game going between now and then. And certainly it'll look better against these two lesser opponents. Ohio University did just give Rutgers a tough game, 34-31 last Thursday or Friday, whichever day it was, Thursday, I guess. And we'll see if Ohio U, they play West Virginia this coming Saturday at home, which is kind of a unique thing, and for them to host West Virginia. And we'll see if they can give West Virginia a tough game, or maybe even knock them off. But, coming into the Horseshoe, they're not going to necessarily be a pushover. Ohio State should win the game handily, but, I don't look for it to be a 50-3 rout or anything like that. So they've got to get their stuff together. The real games are coming, sooner rather than later. So, I think, we'll see more out of the run game. It's just a matter of offensive line coming together, and the running backs hitting the hole a little harder, and better vision, and all these things. Carlos Lachlan will get them figured out, I think.
With the mid-level of the Big Ten, or lower tier of the Big Ten's history against the MAC playing closer games, I was happy to take Ohio in 16, Miami of Ohio in 18.
It was all free money. It was all free money.
In 18, and go 3 for 3 on those games.
Yeah, those games were all take the MAC underdog. It was I think one of them got blown out of the 4 or 5 that were played, but the others were
Purdue.
Purdue, yeah, Purdue blew out Ball State. Again, I wouldn't bet a Purdue game anyway, just on principle, because you honest to God don't know what, are they any good? Are they not any good? What, certainly Ball State doesn't tell you anything. So yeah, I would, it's one, back in my younger years, the idea was, the question was, you would grab the TV listings, or you'd call it up on the screen and you'd say, is this game on television? And the answer would be yes. Then you'd have to bet that game because it's on television. Well, the issue now is we're looking for games where we can actually find value and win money. So that's more the strategy these days than just say, oh, my goodness, Akron's playing Nebraska and it's on Big Ten Network, and I gotta have money on that. Nope, not anymore.
Steve, it's a perfect segue. So here we go. College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks: 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now. And when you've got a betting tier, it's key to come through early in the season.
I was just going to ask you, how did we
15
do?
and 7 against the spread.
What was it?
15 and 7 against the spread. This guy right here.
There you go. Well,
hopefully that holds up.
I was on the right side on Ohio State and Florida State plus the 14. And I was on the wrong side with Notre Dame winning and Clemson winning. So of the big four games. But yeah, those were kind of my thoughts last week.
I guess I split those 4 as well. A different 4, but
yeah,
that I went with. Kevin, you mentioned a feel for the Big Ten, and since we've kind of wandered into Big Ten territory, you can start us out on your thoughts about Week 1.
Big Ten goes 16-2. I think the 2 losses were easily predictable, with UCLA losing to Utah, and then I think the other one was Northwestern Tulane, if I remember right. Honestly, I felt really strongly about several games, but I managed to get myself all twisted up over the Wisconsin game, and that one kind of cost me. I mean, I lost $5, so let's not act like I, I'm in deep water on that. But it's the Big Ten, and I mean, I think that we're going to need a couple of weeks to kind of see some things separate, but. I didn't walk out of the weekend going, wow, this is, the Big Ten is far and away the best conference in college football. I mean, I think there were some teams that just won because of a matter of what the matchup was. I mean, there are a lot of teams that are in much worse position than Ohio State with, complaining about 203 yards of total offense, quarterback throwing for, a buck and change or whatever. Ohio State walks out with a win over the number 1 team in the nation. I think there's some other teams that just kind of managed to get to the finish line just based on not really playing anybody. But we'll see. I'm looking forward to seeing what Oklahoma and the team up north are able to do this weekend. That's the game that I'm planning on DVRing beside the Ohio State game, maybe 1 or 2 others, but that's the one that's captured my attention. That and Iowa State.
Yeah, I think while Week 1 was the week with all the cachet nationally, with Notre Dame, Miami, Ohio State, Texas, Clemson, LSU, even Alabama, Florida State from a name brand standpoint. Week 2 in the Big Ten, in terms of Big Ten teams, aside from Ohio State and Texas, you get some interesting matchups. Illinois is going down to Duke. The Iowa State game. Michigan State's got Boston College. And then, of course, Michigan, Oklahoma. And there might be a couple in there as well.
You look at the week as a whole, and it's like, there's no major marquee matchups, but these are the times where you get some interesting endings. And I don't know how many upsets there are going to be, but there are going to be some games down to the wire that makes it exciting, kind of like the first 2 nights of March Madness, the first 2 days, where none of the games you're necessarily excited about, but then you get a run of interesting finishes. And yeah, I'll be watching. I think Boston College at Michigan State. Michigan State needs that one just to show. UCLA is probably going to lose at UNLV. So that's going to be difficult for them. I expect Michigan to lose at Oklahoma, but if they don't, I think that's a really good win for them, for Bryce Underwood, who is pretty darn good against New Mexico. New Mexico is a really bad team, but Bryce Underwood, like Julian saying, looked comfortable. I think he threw a couple of throws he shouldn't have, but got away with it. But also was pinpoint on a bunch of other throws, showed some incredible touch on a throw here or there, and just looked comfortable. And the running game looked good for Michigan as well. So that'll be an interesting one to see how they handle John Mateer at Oklahoma. And Oklahoma, I don't think, ran the ball very well, but Mateer can do a bunch of stuff on his own. So how well do they contain him? Maybe like Ohio State containing Arch Manning, just keep Mateer in front of you and let the coverage hold. But I don't think Michigan's coverage is nearly as good as Ohio State's. But hope to get home for about the second half of that game. Maybe we'll see how it goes Saturday night.
Yeah, looking forward to this weekend. I will set my VCR, or my DVR rather, for Michigan, Oklahoma, just to keep tabs on that, I suppose. I really didn't watch any of the New Mexico game this past week with some other good games going on at the same time. But yeah, I will definitely keep tabs on that. And, starting to keep an eye on Washington a little bit with, Ohio State. They play an 11 o'clock game this week, I think, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific. People are already asking, well, what do you think that game will be in terms of TV? And I think Michigan, Nebraska may be the same day. And I think it's already set or I don't have that right. There's another big game set that day, and it's already at night. So it could be Oregon, Penn State. Let's just see. Yes, Oregon at Penn State is already set for a night game on NBC on the 27th. And we know that Washington, Ohio State can't be the Fox noon game. So that means about a 99% chance it's going to be on CBS at 3:30 Eastern time and 12:30 Pacific coming up on the 27th. So, and next week they play OU at night, and it's on Peacock. So, yeah, you got that going for you, which is good.
All right, folks. We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Wednesdays, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, we believe will be our destination just about every week going through the rest of the season. Otherwise, subscribe and hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. Steve's at Bucknuts 247 Sports. Of course, Kevin's the Big Me Podcast. He's got the Tale of the Tape. You got to be looking out for that. All the names have been confirmed and verified. And then with Tony, it's the BuckeyeHuddle.com. And it is also the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. Any parting shots, guys?
No, just stay healthy and play a lot of the freshmen and redshirt freshmen who've never played. I think that's what this week is all about, is get everybody that has a pulse into the game. Most of the recruited players, what we used to refer to as the scholarship players, should play in this game. Maybe the last 5 or 10 of them wouldn't, but, typically a lot of them would as one of their 4 games that they're allowed to play in and still redshirt. And Lincoln Keenholz, I think he needs a quarter and a half. If you give Sayin 2 quarters in one series and then, ball cap, clipboard, and here is Lincoln Keenholz to get 30 snaps or whatever in the second half, that would be huge too. So a lot of guys need a lot of work, and this is the game to get it for them.
Let Tavian St. Clair throw the ball on Saturday.
Yes, he gets the last series, and he gets to come in and chuck one up a little bit just so everybody can see how big his arm is.
Yeah, we could spend the next 2 minutes coming up with it. I'm sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
I was going to say, if you're Grambling, you can't come into this game with, really fragile feelings. You know that this is a bye game. You're making $1 million, whatever the contract is. If Ohio State wants to run offense for 60 minutes, you're just, okay. I mean, stop them if you don't want them to.
We could spend the next couple minutes trying to think of every Ohio State game in history where they hit 70 points. I'm guessing Tony could probably come up with the most, although I've got a few on my brain.
Florida A&M, they did it
Florida
against
A&M with
Miami.
Miami
recently.
76.
Yeah, 77-5.
77.
76-5.
76-5, I think.
Yeah.
Florida A&M with Kenny Guyton.
Yeah.
Rice
game way back
in the day, right? 70-7 against Rice.
Yeah, Rice.
72-0.
In 1996, yes. That was the year where the OSU student bookstore, or maybe Long's, whichever, I think it was the OSU student bookstore, the margin of victory that season was the discount off of the apparel. And so after the first 2 weeks, they had to cap it at 50% because the first week it was 70-7, and then next week it was 72-0. They're like, it was like people just running out of there with free goods, basically.
That's great. Earl Bruce had a team that beat Northwestern 70-6.
Yeah. Vic Janowitz played in an Iowa game. They had 80 points. That's clear back in the 50s, though, or late 40s or 50s, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Close one against Minnesota. I think 69-13 in 83.
Yeah.
All right. I think there might be an Eastern Michigan game out there too. Like,
Oh,
17
yeah,
to
yeah.
21.
Yeah, infamous. Yeah, yeah. Infamous for
bad.
how ridiculously useless it was. But
All right, folks, make it on back here at the Voice of College Football next Wednesday. In the meantime, Steve, Kevin, and Tony have plenty of content for you. So keep it locked in.